7-2 seems to be the name of the game so far today, but hopefully Cloud9 against Wildcard is going to be a little bit more close in terms of the matchup. Both of these teams are looking to prove themselves here in Tier 1. Cloud9 has a great roster, maybe not the best performance when it came to how they did at Reload, and then you're looking at Wildcard, that with that top 4 finish, they really blow everybody's expectations out of the water. So both of these teams here are looking to make a mark on day one.
Absolutely. I mean, both teams have a lot of similarities when it comes to the IGLs. Two young IGLs, but on polar opposites of the coin. The rest of the team has some experienced players, some rookie players, but the one thing that sets them apart is the IGL at the end of the day. And I think that's going to be the talking point as we get into the game and the post game, is just about how good Spiker is at identifying the issue, sorting out the problems for Wildcard. And that's something that we want to at least see some life in for Packer going into this match.
Yeah, C9's roster specifically here as well. I mean, we've seen them perform too. And then you have Dream added to that too. And this is who you're looking towards when you are looking for that guidance in game.
Yeah, he's going to be that backbone, that spine of this roster. And that's even more worrisome for Packer in my sense, because if you aren't finding that success as the IGL, then you're trying to rely on Dream, where Dream necessarily isn't in that role. It's not to say that he can't step into it, but Packer should be as comfortable as he possibly can with Giddy, with Kobilax. Those two alone already went through their CLs all three together. So if we can't see anything being replicated here, that's again where I'm going to worry, because Packers struggled during Reload at international events against the weaker teams. Now you're in NAL playing against your own region. There's going to be comfort, there's going to be comfortableness, there's going to be familiarity. But then on that other end, you're going against Wildcard that showed their worth during Reload and showed that they can adapt and overcome many different obstacles in front of them.
Of course, it'll take a little bit more time for Packer to get comfortable, but I mean, this is their team stats from Reload. It didn't look too great, and this was against some teams that we would argue weren't at the same capacity that C9 should have been blowing out of the water, and obviously it didn't look that decisive when it came to them at Reload, and that's something that hopefully we'll be able to see some progression on. I really want to see more resilience, because it felt like at Reload, once C9 started losing, they lost the game completely. Like, once they lost the mental battle, it was just completely given up.
Yeah, and they're going to be going up against Wildcard, which I feel like is the complete opposite of this coin, where there were questions about this roster, there were questions about what can Wildcard actually bring to the table, and then you go to your first LAN event and you blow every single one of these expectations out of the water.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is honestly their IGL and Spiker, more so also the players as well, but Spiker just being able to lead that charge, make those mid to late round adaptations, whether using the ban phase to your best of your ability, but just like I said, being able to move around the map, being able to move players around, and I mean, another player that we, like I said, haven't been able to talk about a lot. Bay is someone that, like, I specifically think has not been talked about enough. Very underrated given his performance at an international level, and for his first time, Bay was phenomenal. But all in all, for me, for Wildcard, I want to see consistency. I don't want to see a top 4 finish at Reload be their end-all, be-all.
Yeah, everything was so consistent, and that came down to the confidence that the team has. When you have players like Dash and Kansan who are consistently putting up amazing numbers, being the support system for this team, being able to handle all the pressure, letting the rookies just play their game, of course everyone else is going to thrive. Of course everyone else is going to have that confidence behind them. So I couldn't imagine two better players to be in that position, specifically Kansan. What a player that a lot of people underrated. I'd say most slept-on player in the league right now. I'd easily put him in the top 4, top 5 players in that NAL.
And Dash is also a player that we really want to highlight here, specifically ahead of that event in Reload when, you know, he himself mentioned there are barriers. There was such little amount of time that he had to be able to gel with this roster, and yet you come into this role, you come into this roster, you have a 7-3 map record at your international event. That's a scary team to be going up against.
Yeah, and even a scarier player to go against. He's a big driving force, especially on their attacking half. He was utilizing that Blackbeard and just taking that control and doing it aggressively, having that Brazilian flair that we don't see a lot coming out of Wildcard, and then you match that with players like Kansan behind him to immediately follow up in those certain areas. I mean, Dash is a very scary opponent to be going against, and he's one of the most experienced on that roster as well, also winning Montreal with that W7M roster. So he has history behind him, and he has the skill and what it takes to help this team and push them even further in the NAL and be an undeniable force.
And we can't highlight enough how difficult it is to abandon your primary language to be able to learn a second one and just try to fit in and gel as much as possible. And on top of that, he is, I would say, the most polarizing personality on the team. He is a driving force in the energy, in keeping everybody alive. When we saw him at Reload, he was always cheering, keeping his team. The passion is what radiates through, and I believe, honestly, North American teams need more of that. And I think Dash is a big reason on why Wildcard was able to have that much confidence.
Yeah, we've seen Wildcard at Reload, we've seen C9 at Reload, so it does feel like when it comes to this map veto, both of these teams have had an opportunity to scout a little bit and figure out where they want to go. So when it comes to the map veto here, what are we looking forward specifically?
I mean, for me, like I said, it's going to come down to the IGLs. I don't think any map, from what we saw from Wildcard, I don't think any map Cloud9 would stand a chance on, really. I really think Wildcard will always be able to out-adapt unless Cloud9 has the perfect map set up with the perfect strat set up and they have everything pre-planned. I don't think they will be able to match Wildcard when it comes to the IGL.
I was just about to say, when it comes to maps specifically for Wildcard, you want to stay away from the 3 Cs. And the 3 Cs are Clubhouse, Consulate, and Chalet. And honestly, all 3 of those 3 Cs that I'm talking about, Wildcard are extremely confident on. And when I'm talking about confidence, going against Brazilian rosters on Chalet, which is historically known to be very favored for Brazilians, Wildcard brought it to those teams, and they were doing extremely well. And they know how to adapt on the fly. And Chalet in specific is a map with those mid to late round adaptations. You're moving pieces around. You're trying to figure out the best way to enter into that site, take that map control, apply that pressure. That is where Wildcard has thrived, and that is exactly where we have seen Cloud9 time and time again during Reload struggle.
But maybe they have an ace up their sleeve because they picked it, so they think, okay, we've seen Chalet on, we've seen Wildcard on Chalet, we can make it work.
That's what I was going to say, is the only hope for C9 is the fact that they have preparation and they're trying to go into it with confidence, because why else would you pick one of Wildcard's best maps? That being said,
for memes?
I could be for memes, but one of the biggest hindrances for Cloud9 on Chalet is their lurk game. Cloud9 desperately needs a lurker on the team. They don't have one, so I don't think it will go in their favor.
So I would then ask you, Lax, for a prediction on how this is going to go, considering we are going to Chalet and it is Wildcard.
I am going to say Wildcard, but I will say for Cloud9, they do have VODs on what Wildcard does, so I really want to see very good counterplay, and if I don't see that, it's going to be a blowout.
That's not even... Okay, blowout for side of Wildcard. Okay, so we're both going for a Wildcard then. Thank you. We're ready to head over to our casters, who probably are also going to be picking Wildcard. I don't know, maybe Jesse, you want to be a little different and quirky today, and you want to go for C9?
Well, Ginny, I don't know. I do enjoy being a little different, a little quirky. You know me. But in this game, I think Wildcard proved pretty decisively that they were the better team at the Reload event. And so it's going to be a tough task. Anything can happen. We've got a couple of weeks off. It's been a bit since Reload. Maybe Hansen has broken both of his arms. So there's a little chance for Cloud9 here for sure. But yeah, I mean, Wildcard are going to be scared.
You really did nail it on the little part, by the way, Janiro.
Okay.
It's Jesse is very small, if you have seen him in person. Honestly, I think these teams actually have more in common than they don't. Our first 2 matchups were very lopsided, and I mean, the community poll here seems to think that the third one will be quite lopsided as well, but it's entirely possible. But I think when you look at the identity of the teams that competed in matches 1 and 2, you've got a veteran team, either in terms of roster or in terms of players, going up against a relatively new look of a team, right? Both Wildcard and Cloud9 underwent, like a renewal of sorts during this offseason. They got picked up by big orgs. A lot of players that have been around the block are now reunited on new teams. They're looking for an identity. Dash's quote while we were getting into this matchup talked about it perfectly, like it was a bit scary, but now they found the characteristics of a team. They found an identity. I think both of these teams have tons of potential. Wildcard has seen better results already, but that was just one event. And we've seen time and time again that just because you do well at one event doesn't mean it's going to carry over beyond that actual event. So who knows? I do think Wildcard on paper are the favorites in this series. I don't think these teams, when the NAL finishes, will have that much of a disparity between them. But of course, Jesse, you're the numbers guy. You're always there to not just bring me down a peg, but also give the people the info.
Yeah, well, Parker, I mean, we don't have a lot of info to go off of. Obviously, these two teams both quite new. So, listen, we'll see how the season plays out. I am very excited for Wildcard. I really liked what they put up in Rio. I will have some numbers for the operator bans, which have just finished off on our screens here. Of course, Azami and Clash, extremely predictable from Wildcard. Clash have been getting banned all day long, and Azami, a perma-ban for every team on Chalet. She is by far the strongest operator on this map, so would be shocking to see her not get taken out. And then Blackbeard, Capitao, both decently common. Capitao only got banned a single time on this map in Reload in the first phase.
Oh my.
And Capitao, one of his strongest strengths is taking players out of this library corner where Silent will strike from first.
Keep in mind, on Scopos, he has a second operator that is also in another part of the map.
But there's a drone
good
right
idea
on
as
top
to...
of him?
Sorry?
There's a drone staring at him right on top of him.
Yeah, Kansan was the one coordinating that, and he will immediately swap off to the other Scopos drone that was down inside of Kitchen. Just want to take a second here to acknowledge a community member who's seen quite a bit of spotlight despite not competing in the NA League, and that's Uzi. A handful of players have been running Uzi's player charm. He got one through the content creator program. Lots of people have charms in game. It's very, very heartening to see other players representing people within our community. Uzi was given a charm just a couple days ago, I believe it was announced.
Yep.
Uzi's been grinding for a while and has actually played on LAN before, so no stranger to Comp Siege, though primarily a content creator. It's great to see that there are people rocking and repping his charm. I know that for most people who stream and play this game, getting immortalized is something that is high priority and really quite an honor. So congrats to Uzi, and great to see teams running it.
This top floor hold's going to be tough to crack, but it will come down to this. Kobe trying to find an entry point. That nade's going to be a big problem for him. He doesn't know the guys to the right of the breach and loses it to Kansan. We've hyped up quite a bit, both in the desk and the pregame. Spiker answers with another one onto Dream, so that's now a man advantage going back the way of Wildcard, despite how that first pick went. Still players up top. Giddy needs to strike back if he wants his team to have any shot here.
Unless that gridlock with no Capitao, if you're looking for anti-flank or the ways to flush somebody out, the track stingers can work very effectively. Gridlock also tends to carry nades, but one could be used. All the nades have been expended by Wildcard. Cloud9 doing an excellent job as now Giddy hits Bay and then immediately drops one of those goo mines, littering his path back. All of a sudden, Wildcard coming out on top of these fights. Wildcard suffered that very first death, and it didn't look like it would be the best result for them, but a perseverance and that staying power, it's sometimes hard to shake. Now it's all up to Packer, running that aforementioned Uzi charm on his SMG 11, which is a form of Uzi, if we're being technical. I think it's a Mac 10 is the official gun. He's well positioned for this drop, and with the HP of Kansan holding on to that case, he can do some serious damage. He wins the round based on time, as there was a bit of an issue coordinating what these last two players would do. Kansan did not have the opportunity to get the diffuser down. They didn't have a read on Packer's position. Baby Shark swung in thinking he had the intel, and it does not work out for them. Despite their best efforts clawing it back, Wildcard come up short, and Cloud9 take the round.
Papa Packer closing out a round that looked like it was surely going to go the way of Wildcard. That 2v1 felt like Kansan was hitting every shot he needed to, but it wasn't quite enough in the clutch. Packer's been around the block for quite a while now. He knows how to handle these tough situations. Still a young player, especially for a team captain, just 21 years old and only recently hit that age, but has led multiple teams here at a pro level, including leading Uzi at the Montreal Major in the 2 pro games that he was able to play. So as you mentioned, that respect being shown, I think it speaks a lot to his ability that when Cloud9 were building this new lineup for 2025, they put kind of all their faith, signing not just Packer, but the core of that tier 2 squad that he played with on Makers and eventually CL for Life, picking up multiple players from that former team to rebuild that kind of tier 2 squad here now in tier 1. Packer's been a player who's been talked about a lot recently. Of course, played for a brief stint on M80, was been around the block on Wildcard back in the day too, and he's been one of my favorite players to watch and grow to be one of these young captains because what he's done for these teams has been really fantastic.
I think there's a lot of new faces here in the NA League, a ton of upheaval, and it does kind of create this, this tale of two tiers where you've got, your experienced teams that have been around a while. Some of them might have picked up younger gunners, but for the most part, it's just kind of steady as she goes, where you've got these other teams where you've got people with very limited game day reps, You look on a team like C9 and Kobe is arguably the second most experienced player on this team. You could make a credible argument that it's Silent, but I mean, both Giddy and Packer do not have a ton of tier 1 reps. On the side of Wildcard, I mean, Kansan's been around for quite a while, but beyond him and Dash's limited play, the rest of this team is still quite green as well. I mean, I think you could probably make an argument that some of the older guys, somebody like Canadian, for example, might have actually played more pro games than the entirety of Wildcard or Cloud9's roster combined. Lucky for C9, they've got Dream with all of his experience, and he's exceptionally good whenever it comes to LAN events, and that's going to be a major boon for their team. Wildcard right now on the discovery portion of this map, staring at the newly redone Chalet. It's one of the new maps, quote-unquote new maps here in CJX as we hit the halfway mark of the round.
It's funny you mentioned that Canadian stat. I don't have the amount of games Troy has played, but Dream does have more games played than his entire rest of his team. Packer had a big first round, but it looks like he's about to get traded out. The Damos of Dash doesn't actually hit the shot, but eventually Kansan's there on the other angle to find the kill and clean out the clutch player from round number 1. That means Packer's going to have to IGL this team from the grave as the 5v4 execute will eventually come in from Wildcard. Getting that first initial pick opens up the top floor, of course, and enables them to push in whichever way that they'd like. Control of the dining hatch is often thought to be critical if you're going for a backside push over by Wine, and based on Wildcard's current positioning, that does seem to be the game plan. So a couple more X-Cars to be used from Spiker. They can get some angles open into this backside, and the push will begin.
There's a nade that will sail by as Kobe is on the move. C9 equalizing after losing Packer with only 20 seconds left. Wildcard need to be better managing the clock in this round. They seem to have it working in round number 1, but they needed about 3 more seconds. At this point, they're going to make their execute happen with just 10 seconds on the clock. And what a frenzy it's going to be. A crossfire as bullets whiz all over the map. C9 coming out ahead in every single engagement. It's Baby Shark in a hopeless 1v4, and the clock for yet another round will give it to C9 2 rounds in a row, where Wildcard have had at least one player still alive, but have yet to win the round. Gotta be better with clock management. You just have to be. Chalet, like every other map, defender-sided, so Wildcard will be battling uphill, but you got to manage the clock a little bit better.
Yeah, I really thought that push was going to have a little bit more oomph to it. I guess the biggest problem is they just didn't really have much hard breach too, right? I mean, they all had to funnel either through the half or through the doorway straight into Wine. They were never able to get the boiler wall open, which, again, they had some X-Kairos still. You don't love running through a wall that's only been opened by Habana, but it is doable. Didn't manage to get that angle open. Didn't have great angles from the big garage either, so that lack of hard breach from Wildcard biting them in the end, and then of course you combine that with the clock, which you mentioned, yeah, not a recipe for a successful push. Comes down partially to how much time Packer was able to waste up top, and then even from Kobe going for another kind of extension over to Big Garage just to waste even more time. It's been good so far from Cloud9, a team that a lot of people counted out, the desk and myself, and you included, but 2-0 start, Chalet defense, not bad at all.
Chalet, when it was redone years ago, and I mean, if you played this game at launch, you know that there's a world of difference between the Chalet that was in the game in 2018 versus the Chalet that's in the game right now. I mean, even the Chalet that existed before CJax gave it a new paint job. But if you go back and look at the numbers, when Chalet came back, it was immensely attacker favored, especially that bottom floor bomb site. I mean, the moment that you got the garage open, it was basically over for the defenders at that point. Things have changed. Some maps, after a long enough period of time, will start to skew towards the defenders. Some will remain more attacker favored. Coastline is a great example of that. Nighthaven Labs has gotten a tiny bit more defender favored, but is still pretty decent for the attackers, depending on the meta and teams, of course. So Chalet remains in my mind as kind of a question mark. As we see CGX change things and teams with new rosters approach it, it really shouldn't be as defender favored as it has appeared so. But also, if you have a problem managing the clock, it doesn't really matter what map you're playing. The bigger the map, the harder it's going to be. Chalet is a decently sized map, so if Wildcard can find their footing, I think we'll see this match tighten up.
Created breach from cans in the library wall, and now it's going to be the ego wall as well getting opened up by Spiker. They realized they had a problem with hard breach last time, so they brought 2 this time around. 1 will fall, though. An early death from Kansan, courtesy of Giddy, will mean that their best player is eliminated before this push can even begin. We saw it earlier as well. Packer below. Giddy not done? A third? That was a nasty shot.
Giddy spent so long grinding to get to this point, and he almost found a 4th on Dash, who shrugs off a bit of damage. He and Baby Shark, neither of whom traditionally from North America, send a Brazilian and a Frenchman to get the job done. That's Wildcard's strategy at the present moment. And I mean, I guess you don't need to worry about managing the clock so much if you all die before it gets to the final 30 seconds. Baby Shark now swallowed up over by Piano. Dash with 1 kill to be had, finds a second. Cloud9 can knock it over Eager. They're a younger team, and inexperience makes you hunt those frags, but Kobe Lax and Silent have been here before, and Silent in particular is well positioned to get this, but Kobe does it before Silent's position on the ground is given away. Cloud9 screaming off to a screaming start, 3-0. Far from what any of us expected, and you can see for a team that kept their cool quite well in Rio, this Wildcard team is seemingly letting this match get to them.
No, absolutely. I mean, we've had big play after big play coming out from Cloud9. That round, it just happened to be Giddy who was putting up the big numbers, a huge 3K. Inside the site, they knew his position, but he hits just some wonderful shots, some ridiculous movement. Giddy is technically entering this stage as a rookie, but I mean, has one of the most ridiculous resumes of any rookie that's ever entered the stage. Giddy's already played at 2 separate LAN events, both in Rio and in Montreal. He won 2 separate elements, both Element 3 and Element 4, and he was the runner-up back in Element 2. So, I mean, this guy's been dominating in Tier 2 for a long time. He's plenty of experience at international events, playing against the best teams in the world. One of those guys that, like, technically we call him a rookie, but his experience certainly doesn't feel like it.
It's a very deeply uncomfortable stare, by the way.
It's like hot and cold at the end of the last game.
No, you're feeling about that one.
Yeah.
Not to distract from your point about Giddy, though, but you know, I don't use social media as much these days as I did in the early aughts of Rainbow Six. But I remember when Giddy finally made the show, there were people talking about how long he'd been grinding for. And I think the player, when I talked about this previously, that I, kind of compared him to was when Achieved finally made it to Tier 1. Achieved would, toil in Tier 2, and toil seems to be the word of the day for a lot of these players, and I think it's quite apt. Where Achieved was grinding through Challenger League. He was down in the depths, in the trenches, fighting it out on a whole variety of rosters, some of which were absolute freak shows, but the guy just did not give up, and he finally gets picked up. They go up to the show. Bolo becomes of age to play. They end up getting picked up by Accelerate, later picked up by TSM, and then they go on to win a world championship. And, he has long since departed the Rainbow Six Siege scene. He's a small business owner or something along those lines, and I hope all is going well for him. But at the end of the day, it's like you love to see that sort of growth and that sort of perseverance finally pay off. And Giddy is very much in that conversation. He's a guy, same with JJ, who've been around for a long time. They've been around for a number of years, always grinding, always trying to succeed, falling short time and time again. And now that they're here, it's hard to not root for people like that to do well.
Well, if you're a Wildcard fan, you won't be rooting for Cloud9, at least in this game, because they are now down 0-3 to a team that they were expected to be able to dominate on. They just called a TAC timeout, and that'll be the first test for the new coach of Wildcard, Lagonis, former team captain of Liquid down in Brazil, being imported up to North America. A very late move into the offseason that not a lot of people saw coming, but good to see Lagonis landing somewhere. And if he can inspire the rest of these wildcard players to have a change in their game plan, it's definitely going to be paying off in terms of his import costs. Already, we see a pretty nice start to this round from Wildcard. Good utility being used and a cutoff being held for Kobe, but it doesn't seem to matter. Juggling these ADSs and staying alive on a sliver of HP, he's soaked up so much utility and is still alive, buying time off that clock. Parker, they might just give up on Kobe.
Entirely possible. I mean, clock management for Wildcard has been so poor through these 3 rounds that if you're struggling on the roam, if you're struggling to get in the map and there's somebody who's bogging you down, you kind of need to move away from it. You cannot, especially with the problems you're having so far, you cannot afford to kill, 40 seconds of your own time. Baby Shark is off to the races, but C9 catches them flat-footed. Kansan, the only one from Wildcard, gets on the board. He finds 2 for his troubles. He's been fantastic so far, but his supporting cast is almost gone. It's Kansan and Spiker against 3 players from C9 with plenty of time. This is the best look that we've seen from Wildcard when it comes to balancing that clock. Kansan watching now over towards stairs, and he'll go back towards Solarium as Diffuser goes down, and the scramble from C9 as the clock gets even smaller than it was before beckons. C9 needs to deal with this engagement. Kansan has his back turned to the drop from Solarium. Giddy eliminates Spiker, and it's up to Kansan now to win the entire round for his team. Punished by Silent as he didn't have a good read on it. And the trophy, not just the room, but the actual trophy for C9 is yet another round. Indomitable up to this point as Cloud9 continues their winning ways.
Nice to not overreact. They knew they had the top floor advantage. They knew they were in a 3v2. That plant goes down inside a kitchen. Would it have been better to deny it from above? Yes. Did they know it was going down? They might not have been 100% sure, but they were 100% confident that if they got to the post plant, they were going to be in an advantage. They had better positioning. They had more men alive. And yes, you're going up against Kansan. Never feels good. He's got more than, he's got 1.5 times the kills of his entire rest of his team. But in a 3v1, they can deal with Kansan. He's not invincible, and he's had a good game. He's a great player, but he doesn't really have a lot of help so far. You see some of these players on Wildcard, Baby Shark, the brand new hot pickup from France, coming in yet to find a pick. Bay, one of the most consistent players back at Reload, yet to find a pick. Spiker, the young captain, of course, not a player you expect to be popping off, but still only 1 to his name. Not the start you're looking for from Wildcard, and as we questioned it, it seems like that tack timeout from Lagonis didn't exactly pay off.
5 seconds left before insertion.
Lagonis is an interesting player to talk about here because there's an awful lot that he's gone through as a player and now obviously as a coach. And he gets a promising young team that, kind of reached for the stars in Rio. Dash looked great in Rio. It looked like he fit that team like a glove. And I was, you and I actually co-streamed the event, and we talked an awful lot about how quickly some of these players on Wildcard seem to acclimate to top-level play. Unfortunately, 2 of those players that we spoke very highly of are in aggressive, frag-oriented roles and have yet to find a single kill through 4 rounds of action. That's both Bay and Baby Shark. They are struggling really hard against C9, and I don't know if Wildcard are just having problems droning it out, but their ability to get in the map and take up map control has proven to be a huge hindrance. We saw it all the way back in round number 1 when the Skobos was upstairs. No Capitao to be had. You did not have the tools that you felt were necessary to flush out this library player. Packer is finally taken care of, and that might be one of the best looks I've seen from Wildcard to tackle an offsite player. It comes with a lot of gadgetry used, Jesse.
Yeah.
And it also comes with a minute burned on the clock, but it worked.
Yeah, it'd be better than last round where they spent 1.5 minutes trying to clear the Jaeger and didn't even get the kill. So hey, this time, certainly you're going to feel a little bit better about that, even without the Capitao on the board. That's a very difficult position to try to clear, so player moved off, and now it'll be Kobe who's receiving the brunt of this pressure.
Oh, Wildcard finally getting on the board in these rounds. And it's Silent and Dream. Silent with 4 kills. Dream finds his first. It's a Nitro Cell, an explosive end to Bay. Dash will join him. Now, what seemed to be a little out of reach for Cloud9 is more winnable. You managed to take out 2 players. Baby Shark dies as well. They trade, though. That's devastating for Cloud9. If Silent had stayed upright and stayed alive, Dream and him could have very easily worked this 2v2. Dream using that Nitro Cell earlier to get the kill, but he's under watch from a drone inside a bar, and he's now going to have to be a man on the move. They've got intel. 45 seconds left for them to collapse on him. One can go main lobby, another can drop hatch, and he's got to watch the A-bomb site as well. He has a read, but he's a bit slow on the peak. Dream losing an awful lot of HP, and now decides let's reposition and take the fight over towards those library stairs, but he's exposed to the soft wall. Reed's coming in as now there's a drop, and Dream playing off the sound and intel, but there's only so much you can do when there's two players breathing down your neck. A big wave of relief. Looks like it's swept across the Wildcard player cams as, well, they get on the board. It only took 15 minutes.
I thought Dream had some ridiculously impactful clutches back in Boston when he was playing on that unwanted roster. Had some huge moments for his team in the clutch. Wasn't able to win even a single clutch down in Brazil during the Reload tournament, and then failing this one as well. But I don't really want to put the blame on Dream in that round because that was a really tough round for him and Silent in the 2v3 to try to clutch out. The biggest problem they had was the clock. Wildcard entered that 3v2 with like a minute 15 on the clock. Compare that to the last time we went down to, I don't know, Basement, for example, where they're executing with 10 seconds left, and that makes a huge difference, regardless of what the man count ends up looking like. I'm glad that Wildcard took their time in that push. They had plenty of clock to work with, and they used it really well. So it was nice to see Wildcard slow that down. It gets them their first round on the board. Chalet, again, a map that can be kind of 50-50. Even if you go 4-2, you don't feel great. But at least if you can answer with a couple of back-to-back rounds, get the momentum swinging back in your round, that might be enough to move the needle in this matchup more than the side swap itself.
Yeah, and I mean, to that point, we are in a new era of Siege as it's been billed, and some maps are going to play out a little bit differently. Clash obviously has changed things quite a bit. She's banned. The operator bans being expanded upon and now being done in sequence rather than just having bans that last the entirety of the match will also change things. Those destructive elements that have been talked about, those will change it too. Not to mention the fact that a lot of these rosters are new. There's a lot of change. Chalet might not be as defender favored as we expect. It could be starting to move back towards being attacker favored, which, you know, would be devastating if that's the case for Wildcard. If it is still as defender favored as the stats would suggest, then Wildcard will likely pick things up in that second half. And sometimes it's not as easy as just a side swap, like you said, but some of my favorite parts of these leagues are being able to wax philosophical about this game in the early matches because you genuinely have no idea what the stage holds.
They know Silent is around here. Obviously, they've been alerted by these pests that there's going to be a Mozzie roaming somewhere, and it's a pretty safe bet that he's over towards Solar, over towards Master. He's got Packer just below him to try to help out, but broadly, he is all by himself. Packer's actually rotated over to the blue stairs, so nowhere near dining to help out Silent. It's going to be all on him to make that big flank and time it correctly without very much information to go off of. Could either work very well for him and he could make a huge round-winning play, or might just end up being non-impactful. The track stingers will make it exceptionally difficult as he creeps through them now. Did anybody hear that?
Thing is that we get a front row seat, but there's always team comms, and Silent takes advantage of that, but there's Kansan hiding behind him. My goodness, what a jump scare that must have been. Cloud9 loses Silent, who's been far and away their best player over the last couple rounds, matching Giddy's might. Packers removed by Spiker, and down goes Dash. This 1-2 punch of C9 through these 6 rounds as defenders of Giddy and Silent has been mighty hard for Wildcard to overcome, and their 2 stars are currently sitting at just 2 kills apiece. Thank goodness for Kansan. If he hadn't spawned in Jesse, this one would be, well, I mean, you can't lose much harder. Wildcard likely would have had 0 rounds, but it would not speak well for the team's potential moving forward. Kansan is last man standing, and he is, well, quite a ways away from being a factor. He's close enough to the bomb site, but now just needs to assert himself as once again the clock became a problem for Wildcard. Giddy breaks double digits, and what an incredible first half for Cloud9, a team that has been slept on and put down by all manner of professionals. They are showing up big today, and Wildcard is suffering for it.
Gridlock's an operator whose pick rate has been on the rise recently, and I think it's an operator that often gets overlooked. I know it's an operator you've hyped up quite a bit on previous broadcasts, Parker. She is, but I mean, a Nomad wouldn't have lost that round, and that's kind of where it comes down to. Those track stingers, they do not give you the same kind of alert that an air jab does, and Silent really was able to take advantage of that, crept through the track stingers. They brought flank watch utility, and they still got flanked and lost the round, mostly off of that big play from Silence. Something to think about next time they go onto the attack, but that won't be for at least 6 more rounds. If you're Wildcard, they will swap sides down 5-1 now here on Chalet. As I said, Azami has a 100% ban rate on this map, so no question to see her go. Fenrir has been a common ban as well throughout Reload, which means that Clash will be up for the first time since our very first match of the day. Here's that play by Silent again. Usually when you get a knife kill, it's a big moment, but that's a horrible knife kill to get if you're Kansan, because you're only getting it because your team made a massive blunder. Yeah. On the attacking side of things, double shield banned out from Wildcard. They don't want to let Cloud9 get on those shields. Makes a lot of sense. Packer is deadly with that utility.
I mean, there's 3 players standing within close enough proximity that they should hear that track stinger being activated by Silent stepping over it. But as to my point, if you're talking a lot, Wildcard seems to be a team that thrives on communication. It looks like a lot of them are talking when you'll go to their player cams. If they're communicating and they're focused on something, they're not necessarily hearing what might be a relatively quiet sound of one of your gadgets being activated. And well, if that's the case, good comms might have actually been the reason why they didn't hear Silence flank, especially on an anti-flank operator. Like, I mean, you pointed out, like, Nomad, it would have knocked him over. It would have made a sound. Track stingers, if you're not listening for the sound of somebody walking over it, it's not always as effective as it could be as an anti-flank tool. First half in the books, and Cloud9 came to play, that is for sure. Operator bans are in for the second half. Clash, as you pointed out, is on the board, not being brought by Wildcard. They're going to bring the ability to slow down both intel and movement with their lineup. Bay and Baby Shark bring a lot of gadgetry. One passive gadget, the other an active gadget, so they need to stay alive towards the bitter end if you're Bay in order to have maximum impact on this round.
Baby Shark played Frost on this bomb site just a single time of the 6 times they played it back in Rio, so might not be something that Cloud9 were able to read into or would be expecting. Wasn't their most recent matchup, though, so I'm sure it's something that they're aware of, and it's not exactly an uncommon pick. Still, this is a very strong bomb site for Wildcard. They won it 5 of the 6 times they played it on defense in Rio, so they are comfortable here, and it would be a good bomb site to start a comeback from, but still a big if. They need to get some confidence. They need to get these new young players, especially Baby Shark, into the action. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter what the statistics say. I just don't see them beating Cloud9.
I think this will be a very critical round. You know, if Cloud9 wins it, I do not see Wildcard coming back. That's
old.
That's tough. I mean, it's 6-1. I think it's relatively, it's cheap talk. It's easy analysis, but I mean, it's true. I talked about this back in in matchup number 1, that we've seen teams come back from 6-0 deficits, but I mean, you need to keep it close at some point. Bay finds 2 of his 3 kills all in the same circumstance, and he finds a 3rd as he trades himself out. An interesting decision for a smoke playing off by Chimney onto that balcony window. Finds 3 kills, and he dies with his gadgetry. I would make that trade. I don't know about you, but why not? You don't necessarily need the Toxic Babes to slow down the attackers if you kill 3 of the 5 of them. That leaves Giddy and Packer as the only 2 up for C9, and Packer gets a kill with the shotgun to close those numbers, but an advantage still for Wildcard, all borne by the great play of Bay.
30 seconds left to try to make this happen. I like with the Lion Charge. They know where these players are. They're all in sight, but they need to push together.
Giddy can tear through that wall very effectively with the DMR. Packer, a little bit more close range, and he's still positioned upstairs. He's got the diffuser, and in a very precarious spot, he'll need to drop. Last Candela about to go out, and Giddy will use the cover to encroach on the space of Wildcard. It was a 1v1 as Packer found yet another kill. But it could not be had as Wildcard just simply outlasted him. And now we might have a tightening of this matchup as Wildcard succeed on their very first round as defenders.
I mean, you talk about important rounds. If Packer had gotten another massive clutch in that, I mean, it wouldn't just be over for Wildcard. They'd be putting on a leash. Thankfully, though, Kansan wins in the 1v1, and so they don't have to deal with that any longer. They can continue to survive without being on match point. You know, I think it really does speak a lot to Bay's character to be able to stand up when things are looking so bad on the scoreboard. He's down. He's only gotten a single kill before that previous round. Still has the confidence to step up, make a play. He is their primary entry player for a wild card, and so he is the guy that needs to start things off in a round. So he said, absolutely, I will do it. Steps up for 3 big picks up there on the window on the Mez, and I mean, that's exactly what you need to get a team back in this game. I think he is an extremely underrated player on Wildcard. He had the single highest cost at reload, meaning he was a very consistent player for a Wildcard at that tournament. Kansan got a lot of the spotlight, and I think rightfully so, on their top 4 run, but Bay is an instrumental part of this team, and if he is showing up, Wildcard have life.
You got a lot of threats on both of these teams. Very flexible rosters. Wildcard showed it off a little bit better at Rio. If those of you watched Reload, the very first Siege X tournament, you got to see Wildcard's potential. They had a pretty good result, didn't they, Jesse?
That they did. I mean, top 4, obviously, is the best that an NA team has done in a decent bit of time.
As Cloud9, though, they did not have a great run, and in fact, they looked a little listless on LAN. Unfortunately, if you went on social media, a lot of the fingers were pointed at Kobe's performance, which is a holdover from his time on Dark Zero as well. He had a decent amount of time on that DZ roster before they swapped him off, and they brought in Citizen. They also brought in Spirits to replace Bolo, who once again retired, and well, he's got a child now, so congratulations to him, if that hasn't been talked about on a broadcast before. But Kobe seems a little bit more at peace with this role.
Yeah, no,
and now he's on Ashe, who is not the main entry operator she used to be. We went through an odd period of time that you might remember, Jesse, where she was an excellent utility operator, and a big part of her usage right now is to counter Mira, which Kobe doesn't get a kill, but his gadgetry flushes Dash out of this position, and that's a win on that op.
Yeah, and Kobe still does like to use her as an entry for sure. It was his most played operator in Reload, and he actually did quite well on the offense. His 4 stats were entirely on defense. So when he's got this Ashe in his hands, he likes to play a lot of Ram too. The R4C is deadly. So he's going to hope to try to use that for another opening pick, one of his strongest specialties. On this Repel, though, it gets really awkward up against these spots that Wildcard are playing. That's a nice fireball, but it just misses.
Ooh, Nitro Cell goes out. Kansan with 1 pick traded right back as Kobe eliminates Dash. Both teams will lose 1. Giddy, who was quiet last round, very limited HP, cannot be as aggressive or as assertive as he would like to be. Bay swings on to Kobe. They trade each other. There's been a bevy of trades so far in this series and today across the board. Kansan tries to vacate the premises and Dream punishes him for that. Wildcard now down in numbers, but lots of time has gone by. Cloud9 through 2 rounds has shown that they can manage the clock as attackers a little bit more effectively than Wildcard, and that might be the difference maker here. Drones get put into position, Jesse, and there's just a little more than 30 seconds left for Cloud9 to push to match point.
Yeah, it's time for Baby Shark to prove why he got picked up on this team. You cannot let it all lie on Spiker inside the site. Baby Shark's in the off-site position. This is the fight.
He's got the angle held. Baby Shark's trying to account for multiple angles that they can push on in. Thankfully, he doesn't need to worry about lobby as the castle barricade blocks him off from there. Bullets will whiz on by. Spiker sees the lineup and gets 2 of them. That's how you win a round in a split second. Baby Shark gets the final kill, and Wildcard have come online. Cloud9, well, they're not having the same success as attackers, despite, again, there being some promising things that we're seeing on their side.
Yeah, Packer's not the only one that can clutch on that cafe anchor spot. Big play from Spiker. And Baby Shark, I liked his positioning there. He won his 1v1 duel. That was his job that round. Took him a bit of time. Obviously, the player on the other side of things wasn't eager to get into that gunfight, but I love the reposition from him. He managed to get that done. Kansan looked very frustrated when he lost the gunfight top floor and put his team into the 2v3, but I think deep down he knew he had that confidence. Yeah, maybe Spiker and Baby Shark hadn't been putting up the biggest numbers so far through this game, but you've got to have trust in your captain. You've got to have trust in your new young pickup in Baby Shark, and I think that trust really did show through there. So good from Wildcard. Obviously, 2 in a row now. This is starting to look like a comeback, if I can say it without cursing. 2 rounds in a row. Obviously, sometimes defense can be a difficult side to make a comeback because you have to rotate through sites. They will go top floor this time around, but all signs are looking promising on the defensive side. Wildcard looked like a different beast.
I didn't want to call you out when you said, maybe it's a little bit more than just a side swap. And then the side swap happened and it was, so far, it literally just looks like the side swap has completely changed everything. Sometimes maps are like that. Sometimes we see 5-1 halves for defenders. Sometimes we see it for attackers, albeit much rarer. I imagine if Wildcard win this round, unless it's maybe really, really tight of a round, I suspect we're going to see Cloud9's timeout get taken in response just to kind of stem the bleeding and cool things off. Silent and Giddy have not got a kill between the two of them since the side swap went in. Kobe and Packer have come alive, and they've been trying to hold things together, but there hasn't been much offense at all for this Cloud9 team, at least nothing really to write home about since the change came in. It's 2 rounds. It's a relatively small sample size, but 2 rounds can realistically amount to a third of the half. If they're held off the score sheet here for Cloud9, that's particularly troubling. They're both on operators with decent guns, and right now everybody on C9 can do some serious damage should they want, except for maybe Packer, as he'll guide that diffuser in. You want him staying out of harm's way.
Likewise, unlikely to see Bay do any big plays as he's on that Clash. One of the best counters to Clash can be the Gone 6, but Dream used his earlier in the round, so to destroy the Clash shield, if it ever gets put down, you're going to rely on Zoe charges or Ash charges. Silent will go down. Those Twitch drones wouldn't be much help, but still another number off the board. Entering the building can often be one of the most difficult things of Chalet, and once again, that reigns true. Big pickup from Dash now. It's a 5-on-3.
Dash and Spiker just tearing through these players, and C9 much worse for it. Right now, outside, struggling to get in. You nailed it. Getting into the building in Chalet is really tough. I said unless this was close, we were going to see a timeout. At this point, I imagine they've already informed the admins of a timeout because you are staring down a flawless round. The one saving grace is you might actually be able to just call a timeout here in a bit more casual a fashion, right? It's just Dream in a 1v5. There's an Echo on the board. Still 2 toxic canisters from Spiker, and there's a Clash present. This is an almost unwinnable situation for any player, period. Doesn't matter if you are the LeBron James of Rainbow Six Siege. You're not going to be able to pull this one off. Dream kills a bunch of time and then drops down, and well, they all were fighting for that final kill. Down he goes, and Wildcard putting together quite an impressive run right now. They are 1 round back of drawing even with Cloud9.
Not sure that Bay on Clash had the highest impact in that round, but still nice to see him flex into that newer operator. I don't know if they will ban it here. They had a lot of counters to it on that board, and it only got brought on a single bomb site. They will opt to take the Clash off the board, and Wildcard respond by removing Ying. So I think a fair trade, and that Clash will no longer be seeing any play. Usually on that top floor bomb site, they would be playing the Smoke. That tends to be the operator that he plays. So expect to see him return to that operator if we even get back to the top floor. Of course, Wildcard are certainly hoping that we do. And as you predicted, Parker, the tactical timeout will come through from Cloud9. Coach Vivid will be talking to his team at this point and trying to inspire some confidence to get them back in this game, maybe solve some of the issues they've been having on the attack. Vivid and Mossy, the coach and analyst duo that have been together for quite a long time, kind of at the lower end of the North American League on Luminosity for a while and on a couple different teams. It's interesting to see them getting picked up by Cloud9. This will kind of be their moment to shine.
I feel vindicated.
Yes, it was a good call.
I mean, you can be a relatively inexperienced caster, and I think you can still know what's coming, right? That's an
Intero special.
Good. Yeah, the Intero special, sure. I mean, you've seen very little good from Cloud9 over the last 4 rounds, and Wildcard has put together this impressive body of work. Again, if you're to continue with the belief that this is a defender-sided map, which it sure looks like from what we've seen so far, then Wildcard are in a great spot. All Cloud9 needs to do to secure overtime is win a single round on attack. Now, with the way that it's looked so far, winning more than that seems like it seems like it's unlikely. I don't think Cloud9 is going to be able to win 2 on attack just based on what we've seen so far. Things can change. Maybe the tactical timeout is going to diagnose some issues. Maybe they found that there's a problem or two that they need to work towards. But some of the issues that we saw plaguing Wildcard are also plaguing Cloud9. Entry on Chalet is challenging for most teams. It has been especially problematic for both of these squads doing battle with one another. Mute has been a near constant for both teams. We saw Mozzie on the board as well, denying information while you have strong operators off the board that keep you, whether it be a Capitao or whether it be somebody on attack, as we saw through the first half, or now here, you see a Yingon. Some of those tools to flush you out of tricky spots are just not available. You also don't know what spots they're playing in if you're stealing information away from them, which a Mute and a Mozzie can do. So both of these teams are reacting to a very defender-sided map quite well, and this has been far and away the most exciting matchup that we've seen today.
That was a really cool play by Spiker. He saw that Giddy threw out a Sens roller through the drone hole for a late pop-up, right? He's going to keep it down, and then when they go over their execute, he's going to pop it up. But Spiker had a mute jammer in pocket, so he just put it down. Giddy's not going to be aware that his wall is now jammed. So when they go for this execute in about 1.5 minutes, they're going to expect that line of sight to be broken off. But in actuality, Spiker will have a clear view of anybody who's trying to jump in that big games window. Just keep that in mind, because that could end up being a huge difference maker in the late round. In the meantime, they do still want to clear top, and that's been going pretty much fine. There's not really been much contesting them up here in terms of wildcard players, so that's been going off just fine, but keep in mind for the late round how that could go.
Packer struggling now to get inside the building as he looks at that bookcase not far removed from library. Baby Shark and Bay combined for 2 kills through 6 rounds of the first half. Since then, oh my, they've combined for 6 in just 3 active rounds on defense, doing much better as defenders. Bay dies very early. If you remember, he had a great play upstairs by that mezzanine, looking out onto the balcony on smoke. He will not replicate that success. And because of that, and because he's picked off early, those babes will have no impact in the later portion of the round. Of course, the ones that he had still remaining in back pocket. Cloud9 called their timeout. They find the first 2 picks in this round, the best attacking round they've had so far. Silent is sat down by Kansan, so Wildcard still very much in this. Clock management will be very important as we hit the final 30 seconds. Wildcard drawing blood a second time. Now it's Dream shut down. Packer will join him. Giddy is on the board, and he finds 2. Giddy had a terrific first half, but he quieted down. 12 kills in his hands. 14 in Kansan, but Kobe Lax is also there to be a difference maker. And an impressive run from Wildcard has to end at some point as Cloud9 seems to hit the river. And now we wait. Can they pull it out? They sit on match point.
Not a clean round win by any means. I mean, that Monty play that went deep into back bar could have been the end of them. There was yokai spam coming down at the Packer, right? There was a melee and eventually a frag onto the Monty player, and usually that spells disaster for a push, but they were able to work picks elsewhere throughout the map. It was a great round by Kansan. Won his first duel and then was back, but this is the 3rd or 4th time now that Kansan has been last alive on his team, and doesn't really matter how good you are when you're in a 1v3, a 1v2, a 1v4. Winning out those rounds becomes really difficult at a high level of gameplay. So tough for Kansan. Once again, just in his positioning, couldn't make it back to the site in time. And that's going to be Cloud9 taking match point in a game that they were not supposed to win.
I mean, the analyst said it'd be Wildcard. You came out and said it'd be Wildcard.
Mm-hmm.
I said Wildcard would be the favored team, but I don't like doing predictions. Both of these teams have shown some very obvious weaknesses. Could it be the map? Could it be coordination surrounding intel gathering? Again, I go back to the operators that are being brought, and most importantly, the operators that are banned. Wildcard has been rocking a Mute quite consistently. We saw Mute on the other side when Cloud9 was defending. We saw Mozzie as well. So intel is obviously very important on every single map. It's especially important when you're on a newer team and you're still trying to get game day reps in. And let's not kid ourselves. Both of these squads are still brand new. Their only real game day reps we've seen were in Rio. Packer taking advantage of Nook's cloaking ability, walking in, and he kills Kansan on a leap as he manages to make it out of dodge with his life still intact. That might have just broken the backs of Wildcard. Packer doing all of that himself through the main lobby, Jesse, and it's a 5v3 with 2 minutes still on the clock.
What an entry. I mean, Packer, this guy just does it all. Clutching on Newt in the late round, entering on Nook in the early round. Another one from Silent will make the man count even more dominant. It does get traded back, but it's Dash and Baby Shark, the two imports left alive in a 2v4. Loads of time for Cloud9 to play with. Diffuse kit safely in their hands. This is an extremely tough round to clutch up. Dash and Baby Shark also nowhere near each other at the moment, so unable to go for trades unless they hook up later in the round.
Because all this action happens so quickly, there's tons of gadgetry on the side of Cloud9. They can just simply outlast you, outdrone you, and outblow you up if they so choose. Flashes, regular nades, Rotero drones, an embarrassment of riches for Cloud9. As Dash expends his own explosive, and Giddy, the player we hyped up so much, gets the final kill. Cloud9 walks away with their first victory in their first match here in the North America League.
And if you can count on anything from Packer, it's a big pop-off after a big win. A huge performance from the 21-year-old captain of Cloud9 from Lansing, Michigan, showing up when his team needed him both at the start of the game and at the end, start to finish. Packer was there making the big plays for Cloud9. As you mentioned, I mean, Giddy had some huge moments in that as well. We saw Kobe with some strong starts on the Ash as well, but for me, it really does come down to Packer. Just a fantastic game from him.
How wrong I was saying that what we'd seen from Cloud9 did not give me confidence, but boy, oh boy, that timeout happened and the entire team changed over. Cloud9 looking like their old selves in that second half. At the very end, what a performance. We still got 2 more matches to go. DZ versus OXG is up next, but an interview with our winners awaits us the other side of this break. Sit tight.
Solo cam.
Guys, there's a BP in the main lobby cam on you guys.
He's calling you guys, yeah.
The main lobby cam.
Shoot them in the lobby cam.
You're running out, walk out, Kobe.
C4ing. He's half wall now, half wall last time.
Nice!
Good job. Good job.
Great play, Packer.
Cloud9.
Great play.
Welcome back to the NAL, the classic. You know, I thought about like how best to introduce the fact that we're back and Cloud9 just won. But honestly, I just want to ask both of you, what's it like to be wrong?
I mean, it happens in this. I mean,
Yeah.
it's good to be wrong,
Feels
though.
good.
I mean, the thing
Does
is,
it feel good to be
yeah,
wrong?
it does,
wrong,
because
yeah.
it obviously goes to show that they're putting in the work, that they learned from their mistakes. Now, that game
Yes.
got a lot closer than I think that they anticipated. I was hoping they were closing it out sooner, but we did say, you know, Packer can lead on that forefront,
Yes,
especially in those
100%.
attacks. He was leading, and not only leading, he was also playmaking. So already, that's a huge difference in terms of what we saw in Reload versus now.
Monitor was on, check.
Absolutely. I mean, that was the biggest issue going into it, is I brought up the lurking factor on Chalet. It's a very big question. You have to have a player that's prominent on lurking. When you look at C9, there wasn't one real player that would stand out, but Packer fit that role. We saw him on the knock. We saw him going for those kills. And honestly, he was getting those opening frags. He was getting in the positions for his teammates.
Yeah, the Game Pass highlights are only further going to emphasize the fact that, you know, Cloud9 has clearly learned from their mistakes, and I think from the side of Wildcard for me, then it's like, what went wrong here?
Yeah, honestly, it looked like a very dull Wildcard to what we expected to see, obviously. That we saw at Reload a Wildcard that was very adaptive. They'd see something going wrong, they'd instantly know how to readjust, know exactly where to go. But now we found themselves where something would go wrong, they'd lose a pick, they'd lose 2 picks, and they didn't have a response. They didn't really know where anybody from Cloud9 was playing, and the info denial that Cloud9 had was a formidable job by them to be able to shut down Wildcard on trying to get that information. But it just didn't look like Wildcard was too comfortable. But I didn't want to take anything away from C9. I really think they did a really good job at understanding and countering what Wildcard did.
Yeah, I mean, in some situations, starting out on attack can be rough because then you really have to be on top of your comms. You really have to be in sync with one another. Whereas when you start on defense, you kind of already understand what that setup is going to look like. You kind of know how to work around the map. You know what's possible, what's not possible. So I can maybe write that off on Wildcard, but I mean, still, I don't want to take anything away from Cloud9 because I think they learned a lot from Reload and the structure and how they wanted to play fundamentally, and we were seeing that through and through with every single round. Now, like I said, that 7-4, Wildcard obviously showed a little bit of fight back, but I think Cloud9, for the initial start of their defenses, they played it flawlessly.
Yeah, and Giddy as well was this player that stepped up today too, and I think with that performance that he's had, he's qualified himself for the Blacklight detail. It's like a little highlight package of what we've seen from him on this first map so far.
Yeah, and he deserved it, absolutely, because Giddy is probably the most criticized player when it comes to the league. Even when they qualified CL4L, everybody was saying, well, I mean, they would have done better if we just dropped Giddy. Every single game, win or lose, somebody is tweeting about dropping Giddy.
You mean X?
X, yeah, on X. Somebody's talking about dropping Giddy. And honestly, it's become somewhat of a joke because especially today, he's proven that he's finding himself more and more comfortable in this environment in T1 as he's getting more experience playing against other teams. And today was a prime example. I mean, I can't really pinpoint one specific thing other than the preparation that Cloud9 had going into it. They knew exactly what Wildcard was going to do, where they were going to be. They executed on those first picks. The rest was history.
The rest was history. But you know what? We're in the present, and we have Dream as well ready to have a little bit of conversation about what we've seen today from Cloud9. So first off, congratulations on your first win here in the NAL. What a way to start off the stage. Would it be possible to give us some insider info on what it's been like from Reload up until now into the NAL? What has been the process looking like to actually learn from some of the mistakes that we've seen you guys made? What's been the work that you guys have been putting in everything behind the scenes?
Yeah, I think from Reload to now, we really just took a look inward and thought, what do we want to be like on as a team? On attack especially, we changed around some of the roles. I'm more full-time support than I was at Reload. I was a little bit more flexy. Just making sure I get drones in front of people, get them in engagements, get them those gunfights, and just really how we want to play the game.
Well, not only were you flexy, but you were sexy too, Dream. That being said, vibes is a very big thing at Reload. It felt like when things didn't go your team's way, it looked like the mental kind of shot. You guys would lose quickly after. It would go one round after the other. It was hard to stop the hemorrhaging. But in today, it looked like that changed. The mentality is there. So walk us through what it's like to keep the mentality for you as a vibes guy that we all know. How do you keep the energy of the team, especially when things don't necessarily go right in a round?
Honestly, I feel like I kind of passed that torch to Kobe a little bit. I mean, I think he is, maybe I'm number 2 vibes guy. He's number 1. He really just reset the team. After that timeout, just makes everybody laugh. And we just reset completely. And we're guys, we got this. We still got the lead. We're going fine. And we just finished it out.
Well, Dream, obviously, congratulations on that win. I do want to ask, so on the desk here, we were kind of criticizing Packer's ability to IGL, especially during Reload. We were seeing a lot of hiccups, a lot of kind of just stalling, not understanding of what the decision was going to be made. Whereas now what we were seeing in this match, we were seeing Packer not only lead you guys, but also take initiative in getting those openings, finding where he can set you guys up for an attack, or just finding that initial opening to open up the round, then to play down from there. So in my opinion, what's been the biggest take for your perspective of seeing Packer from Reload versus now?
I think Packer is incredibly hard on himself, for one. I think after our Reload experiences, he just really hit the grindstone. He was grinding every single day, both in the game and out of the game, watching VODs and stuff, and seeing what he could really do to help us to the max. And you could see that in practice leading up to the this game. We were just playing better than we ever were before Reload, or even at Reload. And I think a lot of that comes from him, for sure.
That's awesome.
Well, it seems like all the puzzle pieces have fallen into place for this time around. Thank you for your time, and congratulations once again. Good luck tomorrow as well. Let's have another game. See ya. Right, Cloud9.
They're on Cloud9.
You know,
Cloud9. You guys didn't hear Kobe say that at the end?
Oh, yeah, no, yeah. That's why I was laughing in the beginning. He's just staring at the screen. Cloud9. Cloud9.
That's what it was. Cloud9.
It was Cloud9.
Yeah, we're good.
Pretty much, yeah.
We're done. All right. Yeah, that's actually a really good joke. No, Anyways, schedule for today so far, Shopify, M80, and Cloud9 are all winners. They get a couple of points already, which is great because eventually this is going to impact the standings. And you know, the more points you get, the sooner the better. We still have 2 games coming up today. We have DZ against OXG. I know that's your favorite. I know you both are really rooting for OXG on that
I don't know why
one.
you say that. I've been
And
so
then we-
straight away from Oxygen for such a long time now.
And then we have SSG against Cruelty. And I think the last one, at least for me specifically, is really exciting because SSG at Reload,
Yeah.
Cruelty, you know, maybe they can do some stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I sure hope so, but we won't know until we get to see.
We will not know because
won't.
first we have DZ against OXG. That is our next game coming up. Do we want to maybe give thoughts, feelings, opinions about this one?
No, I'm gonna save it.
Yeah, I'm saving it until
gonna
we
save
actually
it.
start diving into it.
All right, you guys.
Cloud9.
Okay, we're just going to be going over to a break, and we'll be back with DZ against OXG. Don't go anywhere, or maybe do, because I feel like these two have lost it. But we'll see you in a bit.